Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome everyone to 10 Things Parents Need to Know About Why We Immunize. We appreciate your time today. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us, learning about how to talk with parents about vaccines. We are thrilled to see so many of you joining us, and you represent all counties in Arizona and many different occupations. So today we have registered medical assistants, nurses, social workers, family support specialists, immunization coordinators, and many more. So we are happy you are all here. Thank you to TAPI and Central Arizona Area Health Education Center for making this event possible. And we'll go through some reminders for the training today. Next slide. Please keep your microphone on mute unless you're speaking, and we love to have questions. So use that chat box to ask any questions you have. All handouts and videos will be available to you after the training today. So the links to the videos and the slides and all of that will be available to you. So don't feel like you need to frantically write down notes. We will send that all to you in the email following the training. If you are watching this training with any coworkers, please put their name in the chat for our records. Then they can get their own certificate and we can know who is attending the training today. I'd like to introduce our two presenters. We have Kai McKinstry with KHEC, and she is an excellent presenter, has done this many times, and offers a unique perspective as a mom of many children. And I know she's passionate about vaccines, so we are happy to have her here. Her background is in public health, and she's a certified health education specialist. And we also have Wendy O'Donnell presenting today. Wendy has a long history of vaccine knowledge and presenting with us. We have our two best presenters today. They are our experts. Wendy has a master's in public health and is a master certified health education specialist. If I left anything off, feel free to fill it in. So go ahead, let's get started.
Excellent, thank you. I don't know if I appreciate that much pressure being put at me at the beginning, or put on me at the beginning of this, but thank you for the kind words. As Laura said, excuse me, I'm Kai McKinstry. I am a certified health education specialist. I am the program coordinator for KHEC, which is the Central Arizona Area Health Education Center. We are housed under Arizona Alliance for Community Health Centers, if that sounds more familiar to you. So thank you very much for letting me present today. Wendy, would you like to introduce yourself at all?
Yeah, sure. I think Laura did a pretty good job of introducing me. I have a long history in vaccine education, as she mentioned. It's one of my passions. I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids, which you will hear a lot about today, as well as Kai's little ones as well. So you'll get to know us pretty well throughout this.
Lucky you. All right, thank you. So today we're here to discuss 10 things parents need to know about why we immunize. As Laura said, we do actually have a pretty wide swath of health professions here, which is really exciting because all of you kind of have a different hand in supporting families or parents or caregivers or whomever that make some of these medical and immunization decisions for little ones and for our community. So it's really exciting to have you here. If you are watching me on camera, which please don't, just look at the slides. You might see me kind of looking over to my other screen. I have 2 screens today, which is so exciting, but my notes are on my right screen and my camera is on my left screen. So I promise I'm not distracted. I'm just making sure that I, touch on everything I want you to know. So today our goal is to discuss the 10 science-centered evidence-based concepts about why parents should vaccinate their kids. We want to answer some common questions, address some misconceptions and myths. So we want to help you be able to kind of distinguish fact from myth. And so we do kind of go through a couple scenarios where we can do that. We want to provide participants with credible vaccine online resources for parents and colleagues. That's a really cool part. So if you have to dip out and go to the bathroom, please make sure you come back on because those resources are going to be really critical for you moving forward past today's presentation. And I know Laura had already mentioned this, but please utilize that chat box. We've got Denise moderating the chat box. She's got incredible resources. She's incredibly knowledgeable. I learn something new every time we talk to Denise. So, please put those questions in there. She's ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start with this little video and we'll move on from there. Please put in the chat if you have any questions.
I want to tell you about a
time in American history so that
it never repeats itself.
So it never repeats itself.
It was a harrowing time.
A heart-wrenching time.
I could hear my mother warn me, Seal, don't go out and play.
My family was ravaged.
Thousands and thousands died. I was scared.
So scared.
And then one day,
And then one day, there was hope.
Before vaccines, there were few ways to help protect against deadly illnesses. Diseases like measles,
Meningitis,
diphtheria,
Hib,
Whooping cough.
or polio, which killed my grandma's youngest son. Without vaccines, these threats can reemerge.
I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm here to tell my children to help protect their children.
Get your kids vaccinated and keep them on schedule.
I never want my grandchildren to see what I saw.
First of all, is that not the cutest baby of all time at the end? So let's talk a little bit about this video. This video came about essentially because we need to start talking about immunization or vaccine amnesia or public health amnesia. It's probably something that a lot of you have heard at this point. What we're facing is a public health conundrum, if you will, a double-edged sword in the fact that public health has worked tirelessly on creating vaccines that help eradicate disease in our very wide community. Public health amnesia or vaccine amnesia occurs because I've never seen polio. I literally have never seen measles. And the reason I've never seen those, and probably many of you have never seen, the effects of those things in person, is because public health initiatives have created vaccine pushes that are so effective that we've been able to effectively eradicate a good number of diseases. Unfortunately, because of kind of the anti-vaccination movement and because of vaccine amnesia, we kind of think like, okay, so those things aren't a problem anymore. So we don't really need to, keep up this vaccine fight, which we are now seeing very actively is false. And I'm not sure, Wendy may touch on the newest measles cases and other cases that are popping up here in the US and in Arizona. But this is a direct result of vaccine amnesia. Okay, so number one reason, I apologize for the large car driving by in the background. Number one reason for parents to know about why we vaccinate little ones is kids are at risk for disease. In 2019, from January 1st to October 3rd, we had 1,250 individual cases of measles confirmed in 31 states. It's the greatest number of cases reported in the US since 1992. And interestingly, Arizona is a hot spot. I'm gonna read my notes here because there's some interesting details. This map shows exactly what we were talking about with public health amnesia. Measles was thought to be eradicated in 2000, but in 2014, and a lot of you actually probably remember this, I know I do. In 2014, new cases started popping up in unvaccinated communities first. Still 5 years later, in 2019, all of the states in dark blue reported at least one case of measles. So if you really look and count the states, there are 28 states that experienced at least one measles case. That's more than half of our cases from a disease half of our states, excuse me, from a disease we believed to have been eradicated. So the problem clearly persists. Continued immunization is the only way to prevent these diseases long-term. So vaccine amnesia is something that's really important for us to tackle and have a really firm understanding of. Unfortunately, whooping cough is another disease that's starting to crop up again. So kids in US hotspots are most vulnerable, and unfortunately, Arizona kids are especially at risk because Arizona is a hotspot. The rates of vaccination in Arizona amongst Arizona's kids have dropped fairly dramatically, unfortunately. And as a result, we are seeing higher infection rates across the state of Arizona than many, many other states in our nation. ADHS requires every school to report once a year on the coverage levels of kids. And this information here outlined in this map is made available to public and parents so that they can be informed about coverage levels. Our schools in Arizona used to be at 95% coverage, which is ideal. I mean, that's kind of the minimum that we need for disease containment, if you will. But over the last 5 or 6 years, the level of protection has begun to drop so dramatically that some schools have 40% coverage. Arizona has been identified as a hotspot because of these low coverage levels. Okay, so number 2, vaccine preventable diseases still exist. Vaccine preventable diseases like measles, mumps, pertussis, which is whooping cough, and pneumonia still infect and cause sickness in children in the USA each year. I hate this slide. I hate it. It's incredibly important, and so we're all going to sit through it. But it's a tough one. This is a tough one, the video to watch. Again, I'm going to ask that you keep your volume up, that you watch the video, and maybe just let it sit with you for a minute.
It's just kind of heavy. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. It's okay. Okay, take a breath there, honey. Come on. Almost there. There we go. Oh my. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Here. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. That's okay, sweetie. Oh, yeah. That's okay. That's right. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. I know. Yes, it's not. Oh, I know. It's no problem. It's okay.
Okay. So I usually get tripped up after that 2 minutes of torture. I'm almost never coming back not watery-eyed. I think Joy said in the chat here too that she had an opportunity to see this firsthand pre-COVID in the NICU, and it's incredibly sad. If you know or know and love tiny little beings, this is really hard to watch or to even listen to. This little lady has whooping cough, which is a vaccine preventable disease, and if this little lady maybe had a team of caregivers around her and siblings around her that did have better vaccine adherence, if you will, perhaps maybe would have been able to prevent this exposure. And so, I mean, clearly the data shows that these diseases are still circulating, and vaccine amnesia has made it really difficult for us to maintain the levels of vaccination rates that we need to prevent tiny beings like this one from getting, desperately ill. So the sentence here says, I could argue that if you've never experienced some of these diseases, you could fall into the trap of believing that these diseases no longer exist, or that they will probably never touch you personally. But as we're seeing in the chat here, that is that's not the case. It may not happen to, your child or to you or to one but it's certainly happening in our community. Okay, number 3. Outbreaks are preventable when parents make the decision to vaccinate. When we immunize 95% of the population against a vaccine preventable disease, we can prevent an outbreak from happening. And I'd mentioned 95% earlier because the state of Arizona had been keeping pretty good adherence to that 95% number in our schools. And I'd mentioned that there are schools now that are as low as 40%. But 95% is what we need for what you've all heard about at this point is community immunity or herd immunity. The way we've traditionally prevented outbreaks was to keep 95% of the population immunized against these diseases. If 95% of people have immunity, the disease can't spread through the community. It's also important that our youngest kids are immunized before entering school to protect the community around them. We're attempting to keep our communities healthy, and the best way to do that is to vaccinate. I think it's easiest to think about community immunity in terms of a fence. So think about those of us with immunizations as planks in a sort of fence. And together, if enough of us are immunized surrounding one person who's not immunized, we're thinking like individuals who are too young or medically fragile, and individuals who are immunocompromised or for other reasons, not eligible to get those vaccines. They're protected by this fence of individuals who are vaccinated. When a disease comes up, it'll hit this fence, and those immunized people will not get sick or be able to spread that disease, which protects the under-immunized. Outbreaks happen when there are too many holes in the fence. So again, when we're not meeting that 95% or better, that's when we start looking at these outbreaks. It puts all other immunized people at higher risk. So what all kinds of research shows is vaccines work. Vaccines are studied. They vaccines are followed to see how well they're working, and they're tested and updated as needed to work even better. I like the updated part because I feel like a lot of people think they're still getting that polio vaccine from whatever, 1970, and they're not. What you're getting is something that's been refined over and over to remove, to decrease the number of ingredients in there, to make sure it's most effective, to make sure it's the safest thing possible. And so in this little cool graphic we have, we've been able to kind of see this substantial decrease in a lot of these vaccine preventable diseases. So smallpox was eradicated in 1980, which means we decreased the incidence of smallpox by 100%. And by we, I mean obviously me and all of the other scientists that I work with. No, the public health scientists that do absolutely incredible work, and the public health community that tries to help disseminate this education and help with vaccine adherence. Diphtheria, the last outbreak was in 1970. So we have decreased the incidence of diphtheria by 99.9%, which is really, really remarkable. Pertussis, that's that whooping cough video we watched, which is still like goosebumps, decreased by 94.9%, which is impressive, but it's not 100, and that's what we'd love to see. Tetanus is decreased by 26.7% or 96.7%, goodness. And I mean, I'm willing to bet that the majority of us on this call have received a tetanus shot. Neonatal tetanus decreased 100%, which is a huge feat. Polio, eliminated in 1979, this says decreased by 100%. And then measles, we had that endemic spread in the US, although we believed it to have been eliminated in 2000. So this graphic indicates that we've decreased the incidence by 99.9%, et cetera. So, I mean, go ahead and take a peek at this, but the other one that might stand out to you is varicella, which is chickenpox. That's been also decreased by 99.9%. All right. Vaccines save an estimated 42,000 lives every year in the US alone, which is incredibly impressive. That's 3 times more than seatbelts and child restraints combined. And one of the things I typically say in this presentation is I have 4 little people. I have 2 sets of twins, 2 2-year-olds and 2 1-year-olds. And I couldn't imagine not putting them in their car seats. Number 1, because I just need those kids contained. I'll tell you that right now. But number 2, because I couldn't imagine putting my kids in a situation that is unsafe, it is terribly unsafe, especially when there are incredibly safe options available right in front of me. So the choice to not vaccinate my kids similarly doesn't seem logistical, it doesn't seem logical to me. I have an easy for me to access vaccine available to all of my kids to just kind of make sure that not only they stay safe and healthy, but their siblings stay safe and healthy, our family stays safe and healthy. My family gets these vaccines to make sure that when my girls are born, they're safe and healthy. So, I mean, comparing it to the seatbelt thing is really kind of powerful for me, and something I would suggest that you kind of just have on cuff, if you will, to give that information to folks that have questions about this or who want to engage in a vaccine conversation with you. Okay. Vaccines offer protection to us, sometimes in different ways. Let's see. Wendy, I think maybe we were having you do this one. What do you think? Is this yours? You want to do this one? Or you want me to do this one?
I could do it.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, vaccine offer protection to us sometimes in different ways. Newborns receive their first vaccines from their moms. So a lot of times, and we'll talk about this later, there are certain vaccines that are recommended for the pregnant woman during pregnancy so that some of that immunity is spread to their babies at birth. Babies typically don't start getting their first set of vaccines until they're about 2 months. So those vaccines help protect them in those first 2 months of life. We know that some people can't get vaccinated if they are immunocompromised, if they have allergies. So vaccinating yourself and those in your family who are able to get vaccinated, that helps protect those who are not able to get vaccinated. It builds that fence, that wall of protection. And getting shots offers protections that will help your children's immune system fight when they are exposed to diseases. So this won't be the first time that the immune system has seen this disease, and they'll be more equipped to battle it. And that brings us right into number 6. Vaccine antibodies act as personal ninjas to protect from the actual disease. After someone does get the actual disease, it can take several months to years for their immune system to fully recover, leaving them vulnerable to other illnesses and disease. Not only that, it can actually cause them to get very, very sick, which of course we want to avoid. The vaccine tells your body that it needs to equip itself against this disease before you are ever exposed to it. And your body, in response, creates a bunch of antibodies that are like ninjas, just waiting to fight off the exposure. Many years ago, when the vaccines were developed, they had a lot more antigens in them to protect against disease. So you can see this chart, how people say like, oh, well, 30 years ago, we only got 3 shots or whatever it was. But those 3 shots actually had more antigens and protected against fewer diseases. Now there's fewer antigens and we are protected against 14 diseases by the time we're 2 years old, which is pretty amazing. And all of this, all the while, research on safety and efficacy makes it possible for vaccine developers to make sure that they're getting better and better over time. So you don't just create a vaccine and then that's it and we move on. They're constantly looking at the efficacy, at the safety, and seeing how they can refine that and make them better and more effective. Okay, so we're to the first of a few quizzes. I'm not sure if we introduced this at the top. I don't think we did. But
Quiz.
Yes, we got a short quiz. We have, okay, so they will be giving out prizes as well. So you guys are already answering and I didn't even get a chance to ask it. What vaccine is recommended during pregnancy? So we have A, pertussis, which is so Tdap for pertussis, B, flu, C, COVID, D is flu and COVID, or E, all of the above. So I see the answers coming in. I'll just give it a minute for a few more.
We've got 76 participants. Let's see how many people we can get answers from. See a lot of good guesses.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get 95% adherence rates with answering here.
You're ambitious, Kai.
You know what?
I've always known that
That's what
about you.
You heard me say how many kids I have, right?
Oh gosh.
That's ambition. All right.
Or insanity, but
Well, it's a little of both.
looks like they're slowing down. So for those of you who chose E, that is correct. Pertussis and flu were kind of always the ones that were recommended. And then now that there is a safe, effective COVID vaccine, that is also recommended during pregnancy. And that these slides, they just right into the next. They make sense. So number 7 is babies get their first vaccine for mom. So I touched on this earlier, how pregnant vaccines are recommended in pregnancy to help protect babies in those first couple months of life. So the 3 recommended vaccines are pertussis, flu, and COVID-19. So again, the pertussis and flu vaccine have been recommended for maybe 15 years now. But the COVID-19 is the new one. One thing that I find very interesting that you will see on this slide is that they have done a study. They've done studies, multiple studies. And this one found that of the infants who were 57% of infants born to mothers who were vaccinated during pregnancy had detectable antibodies against COVID-19, compared to only 8% of infants born to pregnant people who had COVID-19 during pregnancy. So we hear a lot of times about, oh, active disease is better than a vaccine and gives you a better immune response. This study is showing us that that is not the case with this. And babies are more protected from mothers who get the vaccine during pregnancy as opposed to getting COVID-19 infection during pregnancy, which I'm that's amazing. That's a huge amount, especially since now there is a vaccine for babies, which is great. But again, in those first 6 months, you want to be this just gives you peace of mind, knowing that your baby's a little bit more protected from COVID-19 than they would have been had you not gotten the vaccine. I mentioned earlier, I have 3 kids. One of them was born in 2021, a little COVID baby. So he, luckily, the vaccine came out. He was born in May of 2021. So the vaccine came out and I was able to get vaccinated while I was pregnant. And that definitely gave me peace of mind, knowing that if I was out and about and I somehow got or was exposed to COVID-19, I would have some protection. And then, of course, we didn't know about this, about the level of antibodies that babies would be born with, but studies were coming out and they were showing that there were antibodies. So that made me feel much better about having him at home, having my girls in school and bringing things back and knowing that at least he had some level of protection. This one, again, we know the best way to protect yourself against the flu is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine is safe. It's one of those ones that's continually monitored for safety and efficacy. And the best way to keep yourself and your family and your community protected is to get the flu vaccine. Sometimes, I think this is a common thing that we hear, is that the flu shot gives you the flu. And that is scientifically not possible. What sometimes happens is you find out, so say Kai and I work in an office together and I'm like, oh, Kai has the flu. I'm gonna go get my flu shot. So you're motivated to go get the flu shot when maybe you've already been exposed. Another another common reaction or misconception is that your body, after getting the flu shot, will have a low-grade fever, maybe some body aches, and that is your immune system building a response to the vaccine. So that's actually a good sign, but it doesn't mean that you have the flu. So these are just a couple things that I like to bring up when people's, that's the flu shot is, before COVID, it was one of the most, avoided shots, and people didn't want to get it, and there was a lot of misconception about it. So I always try to bring those, try to kind of reframe it in a positive way, like, oh wow, that's so great, your body had an immune response, that means it's working. And that means, next year when you get it again, you'll be protected again. So trying to keep it positive. Okay, so here's another quiz. Type your answer in the thing. Can someone get a flu vaccine and COVID vaccine in the same visit? So yes, no, not sure. Let's see, a lot come in. Great. Great, thank you all for your answers. It seems as though the word about this is getting out, because I don't think I've seen one wrong answer come in. So good job, everybody. The answer is yes. When you're going in for your flu shot this year, if you have not gotten your booster, it's a great time to get them both at the same time. Getting flu and COVID at the same time would be a nightmare. So you want to do your best to keep from getting them.
Which is something I did. I think you did the same, right, Wendy? You got your flu and COVID at the same time.
I think, no, I got flu early, and then the boosters were recommended a little bit later, I think.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that I got both at the same time, and I'm here. I don't have Wi-Fi. I'm not radioactive, so it's pretty uneventful. I don't historically, I've never historically had a reaction to the flu shot. COVID, I had a minor headache. This is for my second vaccine. So, excuse me, it was actually for my booster. So it's done commonly, I think, at this point, and really is uneventful.
It almost sounds like too, Kai, I don't know if you normally get a reaction after the flu shot, but it's like, might as well do them both at the same time, recover, take a day, recover, and then you're back at it, instead of taking, in two separate chips, having 2 separate days to recover. So
right.
if that is how your body reacts.
Right. It's my understanding that a lot of people aren't reacting, have no reaction, especially with the boosters. So honestly, just like kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't really want to go talk to anybody at the pharmacy twice.
Right. And then number 8, doctors and science support vaccination. These organizations all support immunization as a strategy to keep kids healthy. And you want to trust your healthcare provider. Their education, knowledge, and experience is what you can rely on if you have questions. So all of these organizations, the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Family Physicians, all of these listed on here are great resources. They're also places that you can refer parents to if they have more questions, or if they need more specific information. All of these organizations have great resources that touch on vaccines that are specifically geared towards parents. So. And then number 9, it's important for children to be up to date on shots, because when they're in the classroom, they're in close contact with other children. And if any of you have kids who just started school and are still sick from that back to school little illness that they get, you understand this. My two older kids are just starting to feel better and not snotty anymore, which is great, even though they started school like 4 weeks ago. So, right, it's like I was just expecting it, the second week of school, then they're starting to get all, yucky. So that's why we want to make sure that kids are up to date when they go to school. They're going to be around other kids who may or may not have been vaccinated, who may be immunocompromised, who have younger siblings at home who can't be vaccinated yet. These are all things that I think of. And as much as, of course, I want to keep my kids protected, but I'm also very interested in keeping their friends protected, and the community and the teachers and everybody as a whole. You know, we all work together to make sure that everyone stays healthy and ready to learn. There are requirements for children when they enter childcare, preschool or kindergarten. There's different terminology used. So there's the Arizona required vaccines, and then there's the CDC recommended vaccines. And it almost sounds like the required ones are more important than the recommended ones, but they are not. The CDC recommended vaccines follows the schedule set forth by the CDC that has been extensively studied for the different age ranges. The required ones for school are ones that were voted on by our lawmakers. So there's definitely a difference when it comes to them. So encourage your families, the people that you work with, yourselves, your the families that your own family, to get the ones recommended by the CDC and your provider and the medical provider, hopefully.
I do think that one is a really important takeaway in just, paying attention to what the CDC recommends, and not just thinking that the ones that the school requires are the ones that are most important. It's just because of, politics and red tape.
Right.
Those are the ones that have been approved, but it doesn't mean that they are the ones that are most effective, or, the only ones necessary to help stave off disease in our communities.
Right. For example, the COVID-19 vaccine that our lawmakers voted on this last session will never be required. They made that part of the law, that schools are not able to require that. So that doesn't mean that it's not an important vaccine. It definitely is. But that was the political decision that was made. So don't let the word required versus recommended steer you in the wrong direction. And then number 10, kids still need protection as they grow. So we talk a lot about baby shots. We know that when babies are first born, they get a lot of shots, but it's really important to keep up with the recommended vaccines as they grow. The schedules are updated with new and improved vaccines as they're coming out. Like I mentioned before, they're continually monitored for safety and efficacy. And then you can always go to the CDC, and actually Tappy has a great visual printout of the recommended schedule, which I really like, because it's if you look at the CDC, it's a bit confusing. There's age ranges and when you can get what ages and all those things, but into adulthood, you should be getting different vaccines to help protect yourself.
Okay, so this is actually a really cool video for all of you really fun science nerds like myself. It's why vaccines work. What's really cool about this video, though, is it's also really it's a great resource even just for lay people. So if you're not a public health scientist or a public health expert, or just a total freaking nerd like myself, it's still a really great resource to use for families or for caregivers, or whatever setting you're in where you support parents who make vaccine decisions for kids in the community. So I don't know, what a lot of your work settings are. I do know that a lot of folks now in 2022 have access to tablets. And so maybe it would be cool to have those tablets that have some of these videos available to watch on them, as well as a lot of the other resources from Tappy and the CDC. So let's take a peek at this video.
Aren't you glad you don't have scurvy? In 1747, in the first medical trial ever performed, Scottish physician James Lind found out that eating citrus fruits could cure scurvy. Now, today we know this works because citrus contains high levels of vitamin C. In fact, ascorbic acid, a common name for vitamin C, comes from the Latin for not scurvy. By issuing rations of lemon juice to sailors, the British Navy was able to pretty much eliminate the disease until the late 1800s, when polar explorers suddenly began to see scurvy again. The copper pots holding their lime juice had destroyed the vitamin C, but they were pretty confused. So despite James Lind's experiments 150 years before, citrus fruits became the enemy. And when Robert Falcon Scott set out to reach the South Pole in 1911, he carried the finest in canned meat products, biscuits, chocolate, tea, and zero vitamin C. A Norwegian team beat them to the pole by 5 weeks, and during their sad journey home, Scott and his team perished in a blizzard, sick and weak from what was probably scurvy. It had been so long since anyone had seen this disease, the British had forgotten how to prevent it. When we create such effective solutions, we can forget how serious the problems were. Thankfully, people today don't die of scurvy or polio. Since the introduction of Jonas Salk's polio vaccine in 1955, the disease has been nearly eradicated from the earth.
The thing to remember is that this is a continuous process.
Compare the 358 infections reported in 2014 to the 1940s, when 500,000 people per year were paralyzed or died from polio infections. Vaccines work. Our immune system is on constant alert against germy baddies, with millions of white blood cells each on the lookout for specific infections. When an immune cell meets its target, it replicates itself, and this clone army sends a barrage of protein weapons called antibodies to label the trash for cleanup. And after the infection is gone, so-called memory cells stick around, ready to mount a fast attack in case this germ shows up again. This is how we develop immunity, and it works pretty well, since we're all still alive. But even with all that, some super bad germs can take us out before our immune sentries have had time to call up their clone army. This is especially true for young children. Their immune systems are fresh out of basic training. Thankfully, we have vaccines, which are made of tiny pieces or weakened versions of viruses or bacteria. They let our immune system see what the bad guys look like and recruit those all-important memory cells before we ever have to actually see the real enemy. Thanks to vaccines, the US was able to eliminate measles in the year 2000. But in recent years, as more and more parents are refusing to vaccinate their children or are vaccinating them later than what doctors recommend, it's back. In most states, more than 90% of children are vaccinated, but that's not enough to keep a disease like measles at bay. In our episode about Ebola, we talked about a number called R0, the basic reproduction number for a disease, or the number of people infected by one person in a susceptible population. For Ebola, that number is low, but for measles, each sick person will infect up to 18 others. Well, luckily, vaccines can change that. The fraction of people who are vaccinated or immune can lower the reproduction number below 1, which means the disease is disappearing. 90% of unprotected people who come in contact with somebody who has measles, even just breathing the same air, will become infected. To control a super contagious virus like that, the vaccination rate has to be 95% or above. And right now the US is lagging behind, and measles is making a comeback. The Guardian put together a simulation of just how this so-called herd immunity works. When enough of a population is vaccinated, even if it's not 100%, the herd can protect the unprotected. With vaccine refusal on the rise, our herd immunity is breaking down. Preventable diseases like measles and whooping cough have become our scurvy. Most of us don't know anyone with polio, and measles, it's not that bad, right? Well, yes, it is that bad. Before the age of vaccines, millions of people were killed by diseases that today are just bad memories. Vaccines have let us develop a sort of generational amnesia. Today we expect our children to grow up healthy, and we're lucky that we don't appreciate just how dangerous these diseases are. Like science writer Seth Mnookin says, vaccines are victims of their own success. Because of stories like Andrew Wakefield's discredited study wrongly linking vaccines and autism, and the news media's obsession with pictures of crying, terrified children being poked with needles, people are nervous about vaccines. This anxiety isn't new, though. When Edward Jenner in 1798 saw that milkmaids didn't catch smallpox, well, he realized that because they'd been exposed to the similar cowpox disease, they were immune. And based on this, he developed an early smallpox vaccine by inoculating humans with the cow virus. In fact, the word vaccine itself has bovine origins. Still, as far back as 1802, critics were claiming that the smallpox inoculation would turn you into a cow. Vaccines don't come without risk. Nothing does. But on average, fewer than 1 in a million people will experience a dangerous reaction to common vaccines. And car accidents, playing outside, even walking will injure more children. Vaccines are asking us to do something altruistic, to make a choice to protect not only ourselves and our children, but also those around us. Author Eula Biss says that vaccines are one of the most empathetic things that we can do. A system that's based on people voluntarily using their bodies to protect other vulnerable people. And that's something I hope we don't forget. Now, I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. It's natural to have questions about vaccines, and you should have a conversation with your medical professional. They want the best for you and yours. I will give you one prescription though, and that's to subscribe so you can get a full dose of science every week. And if you want to read some amazing books about vaccines, check out Seth Mnookin's The Panic Virus and On Immunity by Eula Biss. Links in the description. Stay curious. Today we...
Cool. Okay. I love that video. That guy says everything so much better than I possibly could. And it's so succinct and perfect. So again, if you do have the opportunity to use that as a resource that you get to show families that you work with, I would implore you to do it. If not, I mean, do consider checking out some of those other videos. There's a lot of really cool information there that you can just kind of keep in your back pocket.
We know that citrus...
Moving on. I didn't miss one. There we go. Okay. So, COVID-19 vaccines. The safety of COVID-19, vaccine is top priority. Full safety trials were done on each vaccine and ongoing monitoring continues. I know that there was a lot of conversation with the COVID vaccines when they first rolled out, when they were first approved and they were first in arms, that the folks felt that the process was too fast, and it didn't make any sense that this process could be so fast when we're still looking for a cure for cancer. And while those concerns are definitely understandable, there is a reason why these things have moved as fast as they have. The answer is actually pretty exciting. We had an opportunity to have public health scientists and experts from literally all around the world, from the entire globe, working on one thing at the same time, around the clock. I mean, an incredible findings were happening in incredible time. Furthermore, we had such a high incidence of disease that it wasn't difficult for our scientists to pull, let's say, 50,000 positive cases for their research in 3 months, as opposed to other things like a specific breast cancer in which we might get 30,000 cases in 10 years. So we had this really exciting opportunity with globalization and all of these scientists and labs working together, where we could just pull all of this information together in rapid time. We could cut through a lot of the political hierarchical red tape and pull together something that was incredibly effective, using the information we already know about vaccines, using the information we already know about mRNA and the other scientific miracles, if you will, to create something that was effective and could kind of push us through this in a really subjectively short amount of time. So Pfizer and Moderna's COVID-19 vaccines are recommended for everyone 6 months and older. And boosters will be available this fall. It sounds like we actually have some revamped approved boosters by the FDA, so we are going to see those start rolling out as well. All right, so COVID-19 vaccine for kids. Your child may need other vaccines like the DTaP or Tdap, MCV4, HPV, flu, and MenB as well. It is safe to get them at the same time as your COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccinated kids protect other kids in the classroom, friends, and family. And COVID-19 vaccines will help get kids back to activities and friends they love. All of my kids were born in the pandemic. My first set of twins was born in 2020. My second set of twins was born in 21. They're not going, to kindergarten, although they do go to daycare. So I didn't really have personal experience with the incredibly high incidence of depression and anxiety that's occurring in our tweens and teens and young adults as a result of kind of this isolation from COVID. But this is actually very exciting news that now these kids can get these COVID vaccines. They can get back into class. They can engage in that social interaction that is really integral for their mental health and their development. And so the approval for kids 6 months and up is really very important for us. Wendy, I know your little one had to miss out on exciting things, and do you have anything you want to share with that?
I mean, other than the fact that I'm a terrible kindergarten teacher, we kept her home. She was starting, my oldest was starting kindergarten in 2020. So yeah, I mean, so of course we talk about kids being able to do the things that they love, being active, seeing their friends, play dates, things like that. You also think, and this is a very real consequence for people, is the effect it had, on my ability to do my job, because I have my kids home. So that's one thing that we talk about, that if your kid's not vaccinated and they're in school, and there's a pertussis outbreak, and they're not vaccinated against it, they have to stay home. And do you have the resources to be able to care for that child at home? Are you able to take off the time off of work to be home with your kid if they're not vaccinated, even if they're not sick? Because they're not vaccinated, they're at a higher risk, and during an outbreak, so they are supposed to be at home. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate. It was extremely stressful for the parents as well during this time, to have their kids home and to be juggling online school. Online kindergarten is you can't just send her into another room and say, okay, do your homework now. She was learning to read, she was learning to navigate a computer. So yeah, so it's, I mean, it just, as everyone knows, it's just affected every single part of your life. So the ability to have these vaccines for kids down to 6 months is really helping us get back to kind of the normal that we had before, that we never thought was, now you think about it, it's like, wow, we were so like disillusioned. I remember thinking like, oh, I had a big trip planned in 2020, in like October of 2020. And when this first started in March, I was like, it'll be better by then. And it's just like, you look back thinking, oh my gosh, how naive we all were.
Well, and I, in presentations previous, before the COVID vaccine is available for little ones and we started seeing incident rates decline, Wendy or myself would frequently have a kid on our lap. Just, we're all doing the best we can at this point. The information doesn't stop needing to be shared. And so, yeah, you're right. We all definitely saw a very different normal, if you will. And one of the points actually about this slide is once these little ones get their COVID-19 vaccine, in terms of the social integration portion, it's important to know that if your little one or any little one, I should say, or anyone has a COVID-19 vaccine and they're exposed to COVID-19, they no longer have to quarantine for 2 weeks, as is the recommendation for anybody who's not vaccinated. So this essentially means that, kids don't get pulled out of activities, they don't get pulled out of school, they're not losing even more time for education. I saw a study that said that we've potentially lost 20 years of math and science advancement because of COVID. And so it's, this is significant. It's a great thing that this is finally available. Okay. So COVID-19 and vaccine in kids ages 6 months plus. So as we've stated multiple times, kids 6 months and older now are eligible for the COVID vaccine, which is, again, exciting. I think I've said it about 65 times. It's exciting. All of my kids are eligible and receive their vaccines, as well as many other children that I know. So younger children may experience fewer vaccine side effects than adolescents or young adults, which is, that's really exciting. That was one of the things that had me a little wary, is like, I don't really want to make my kids sick, but understanding the necessity is kind of where I was like, well, we got to do it. Just got to get it done. But younger kids do have fewer side effects, and mine had none. And I'm not sad that they had none, but I definitely could have used a day where they just like rested, Children with evidence of prior infection may have fewer side effects than those without evidence of prior infection, which I believe we knew for adults as well, but this is true in kids. Expected side effects are similar to what we see in adults and similar to what we see with flu shots. Potentially pain, swelling, redness at the injection site. Some little ones have fever, fatigue, headache, chills. Again, mine had none of those things. These kiddos can get COVID-19 vaccines at the same time as their other childhood vaccines. That's really important because we all know that we're doing 6 well-child checks in the first year and then 5 in the second. I mean, we're there all the time. And so it's nice to just not have to go back for a separate visit. And a lot of these kids, especially coming into the fall, who are going to be getting their flu shots, can also get their COVID vaccines at that same time. So whether or not your pediatrician remembers to have that conversation with you, keep it in the back of your mind as a parent or someone who's working with parents that we can do our flu shot at the same time as our COVID vaccine. For many of you, the conversation around the flu shot is second nature. Oh, it's starting to feel like fall. It's only 107 degrees outside. When I mentioned that flu shot, I could remember to mention the COVID vaccine as well. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, among children, there have been 14.4 million cases of COVID and 1,420 deaths, which is like not the number I want to end you off on the slide, so I apologize. I should have said that earlier. But the good news is all of these little ones are now eligible for the COVID vaccine, and we would really love to see those numbers of vaccination increase. Okay, so if you need to know where to find a COVID-19 vaccine, there's a handy dandy vaccine finder on the TAPI webpage. It's as easy as it sounds. The COVID-19 vaccine is currently available actually for 6 months and up. I believe this is a snapshot from an older slide. So 6 months and up, you jump on the TAPI webpage and you can find that. I believe we have I'm right, look right there in the chat box if you need that. Even if you don't need that link right now, I would suggest that you click it and keep it on the background for anybody that you talk to that might need it. You can open it there, you can help them find it, or you can send them that link. Okay, let's tackle some of these myths. The myths are fun. The myths are fun because I'm going to bet that the majority of you have heard of the majority of these myths. Some of them I had not heard of, so I would not be surprised if some of these you kind of raised an eyebrow at. But this is actually a big one for COVID-19. Is it safe for my child to get the COVID-19 vaccine given the stories about myocarditis? Myocarditis meaning the swelling of the sac or of the heart, the muscle of the heart, excuse me. The risk of myocarditis or pericarditis after getting an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine is lower than the risk of myocarditis associated with SARS-CoV-2 infection in adolescents and adults. So essentially what that means is the chances of an individual developing myocarditis is higher with the COVID infection than it is with the COVID vaccine. Myocarditis and or pericarditis have occurred rarely in some people following receipt of the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, typically within a few days following receipt of the second dose. So that's about 2.5 people, so 2.5 cases per million vaccines, per million second vaccines. The observed risk is highest in males 12 to 29 years of age. Most resolve quickly with an anti-inflammatory medication. And the Pfizer vaccine given to kids under the age of 12 is a smaller dose, so should be less reactogenic. It's important to note that myocarditis in general is somewhat common, particularly as a result of viral infections. So myocarditis is not something that's kind of COVID specific. Myocarditis is something that literally anyone can develop primarily or most frequently as a result of any type of viral infection. So this isn't something that like, okay, my kid's heart is swelling and it's definitely because they got a COVID vaccine. This is something that just happens frequently, regardless of its cause. So typically about 100 to 200 cases occur per million people per year, generally, myocarditis generally. Next, can the COVID-19 Can the COVID-19 vaccine affect puberty or fertility in my child? Another great question we've gotten a lot of around COVID-19. And the simple flat answer is no. Rumors related to COVID-19 vaccines affecting puberty or fertility are unfounded. And the mRNA vaccines are processed near the injection site. Girl, we are struggling. And activated immune system cells travel through the lymph system to nearby lymph nodes. They are not affecting hormone levels, nor are they traveling throughout the body to other parts of the body. There's not a biological reason to expect that maturation or reproductive functionality would be negatively affected by COVID-19 vaccination now or in the years to follow. We're going to skip. Okay, so one of the things I want to point out throughout the last slides here, we are going to see several videos embedded from Dr. Paul Offit. Dr. Paul Offit is at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think they call it CHOP affectionately. So Dr. Paul Offit, if you have a chance to Google him, has a lot of very succinct, very easy to watch, straight to the point answers to a lot of these myths. These resources are available here, absolutely, but it's also something phenomenal for you to have for, again, these situations where you're dealing with families or parents or caregivers where they have these questions and maybe you're not comfortable reciting, from the back of your mind what you heard in that one webinar you took 6 months ago. But if you have these resources available to you, I love using them because this guy says everything way better than I can. I'm going to skip this one so we can move on, just make sure that we cover everything in time though. Wendy, it's your turn.
Yes, I'm back. So another, I think a question that people have, is it safe to get the vaccine while pregnant or breastfeeding? And I've touched on this earlier with our studies about the immunity that is passed to the baby when a woman gets vaccinated during pregnancy. COVID-19 vaccination is recommended for all people 6 months and older, including people who are pregnant, breastfeeding, trying to get pregnant now, or might want to become pregnant in the future. Pregnant and recently pregnant people are more likely to get severely ill with COVID-19 compared with people who have not been pregnant. And the risk of stillbirth in pregnant people with COVID-19 almost doubles. So it's much safer for you to get the vaccine than to actually be sick with COVID-19. And I mentioned that study earlier, the evidence about the safety and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy has been growing. So they're doing more and more studies. And it can protect you from severe illness from COVID-19 and may provide some immunity for your baby. So this is something that we talk about a lot with the COVID-19 vaccine. People say, well, why should I get it if I still might get, if it doesn't 100% protect me from getting COVID-19? And that is true. You're not 100% protected, but you are much less likely to have a severe case, to be hospitalized or to die from COVID-19 if you get the COVID-19 vaccine. And that is the case for pregnant people as well. It will protect you from severe illness and can, as we talked about earlier, provide some immunity for your baby in those first couple months of life. So we didn't touch much on breastfeeding on this slide, but there have not been any negative reactions from women who are breastfeeding getting the vaccine. This is where I like to share a little story. So I've been lucky enough to breastfeed my son. I told you he was born in May of 2021. I make enough for him and a little extra. So Kai and I are really good friends, if you guys have not noticed throughout this presentation. And her second set of twins were born about 6 weeks after my son was born. So I was able to supplement them with some breast milk. And I, again, was vaccinated and then I was boosted. Kai had COVID-19 spread throughout her family. And of the 6 people in the house, the only 2 that did not get COVID-19 were the 2 babies, the infants that had been receiving my breast milk. So this is just something that I say, it's probably not the only reason, but I like to think that it helped a little bit.
It's probably the only reason. My kids are snotty little creatures.
Yes. But there's growing evidence on breastfeeding as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, I know that there have been a few studies done on the antibodies in breast milk as well. So there's something I like to share. I think it's pretty cool. So really, really encourage. we talk about breast milk with antibodies for lots of illnesses, and it's the same with COVID-19.
So key takeaway is Wendy's obviously a superhero. We call the kids her breast milk triplets.
Yes,
So,
like triplets.
and I mean, the production was enough that my kids were able to receive a substantial amount of antibody-rich breast milk. And so it is very true that this was before my kids could have vaccines. Thankfully, my spouse and I were triple vaxxed at that point. So the infection for us was very mild. My two toddlers at the time who were not vaccine eligible they did have some symptoms, fever, headache, sore throat, as best you could tell from what a 1-year-old's telling you. Lethargy. I mean, they just were not having it. And then we had my two 1-year-olds who were kicking it. They were having a great time. They were living their best lives. They had free reign of the house. So and as Wendy mentioned, University of Rochester did publish a journal at the end, or a study, excuse me, at the end of 21, that does state that there are antibodies that do get past a baby through the breast milk. And so that's really reassuring, especially at the time where, those little ones couldn't get vaccinated, or for whatever reason, if birth mom can't get vaccinated, then that little one who may be less than 6 months can still be receiving those antibodies through breast milk. Very, very cool stuff.
So for this slide, we really want to, we've been talking about kids, we've been talking about making sure that everyone's up to date, but we really want to make sure that you as a health, or as a professional working with families who may be vulnerable or may not be vulnerable at all, that you're vaccinated as well. You are a vital part of the system in Arizona and these services that we are getting to families. And if you're sick and if you're unable to do your job, we all miss out for sure. So here the vaccine is widely available now. It's not like the beginning when there was a long wait for it. You can go in any pharmacy and get it now. Make sure that you are up to date. The new boosters coming out. I know we've talked about this a little bit. It's the COVID-19 booster is going to contain an Omicron specific strand to it. So it's a bivalent. So there's two different ones that it's going to protect you against. So that's really great. I mean, that's going to be just offer you that much more protection. So there's some resources to find vaccine clinics. Your county health department is also another great resource to look for.
Let's talk monkeypox. It's going to be a brief chat. We really only have one slide on it. This is just important. We want to throw it in because we know that this is emerging. We know this is something that's happening right now. So briefly, we'll say monkeypox is a rare disease caused by an infection with the monkeypox virus. There are currently 281 cases of monkeypox in the state of Arizona. People who think they have monkeypox or have had close contact with someone who has monkeypox should contact a healthcare provider to see if they need to get tested. There are 2 vaccines currently available to prevent monkeypox, and they are the ones listed. I've never been able to say them successfully. Jynneos and ACAM 200 is the best I can do. Okay, so moving or continuing on with the myths. And I'm sorry, I'm going to start talking a little bit faster because we only have 22 minutes left because time flies when you're having fun. Okay, so myth number 1, immunization conversations, journey of the vaccine. All right, imagine you're in this scenario. A couple you are friends with tell you that they worry newer vaccines are not safe. They worry that the pharmaceutical companies make vaccines without testing them before they are given to kids and adults. What resources do you have available to help them with their concerns? I know that we talked about, in the beginning that you've got the TAPI resources available. You've got these slides that you're going to be getting. You have the TAPI contacts available, but there are many, many, many other resources available too. So some key points to keep in your back pocket, if you will. Before a new vaccine is ever given to people, extensive lab testing is done that can take several years. Once testing in people begins, it can take several more years before clinical studies are complete and the vaccine is licensed. The FDA sets rules for the 3 phases of clinical trials to ensure the safety of the volunteers, and researchers test vaccines with adults first. FDA and CDC closely monitor vaccine safety after the public begins using the vaccine. The purpose of monitoring is to watch for adverse effects, possible side effects. And monitoring a vaccine after it is licensed helps ensure that possible risks associated with the vaccine are identified. And it's important that they identify this timely and they cure any potential issues. So these watches are really quite intense. I want you to watch this because this is one of the Dr. Offit videos that are pretty cool. This is actually the journey of your child's vaccine, excuse me, and this is a very cool video.
The journey of your child's vaccine. A vaccine must be safe and effective. How a new vaccine is developed, approved, and manufactured. Vaccines begin the journey in the laboratory, where scientists work to figure out how best to protect against dangerous germs. Before a new vaccine is made available to the public, researchers usually must do years of lab tests on the vaccine. If lab results look promising and the vaccine appears to be both safe and effective, volunteers will be enrolled to get the vaccines in a series of carefully monitored clinical trials. The manufacturer usually conducts 3 phases of clinical trials. Each phase is designed to gather more information about the vaccine's safety and how well it works. These trials can take years to complete. During phase 1, about 20 to 100 healthy adults get the vaccine. Researchers track how well the vaccine works, whether it's safe, what is the correct dose for disease protection, and what possible serious side effects may occur. In phase 2, hundreds of volunteers participate. This is when experts learn more about the possible short-term side effects and how the volunteers' immune systems are responding. Phase 3 trials are the most informative, with results from hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. In these trials, vaccinated volunteers are compared with volunteers who receive another vaccine or no vaccine. These results give researchers a better idea of how well the vaccine works and if there are possible side effects they should expect. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, along with the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, review all of the data the researchers have gathered throughout the trials and decide whether or not to license the vaccine. Once licensed, vaccines are made in batches called lots. Manufacturers test the lots to make sure the vaccines are safe, pure, and potent. The FDA reviews the safety and quality of each lot before it is released. The FDA inspects manufacturing facilities on a regular basis to ensure quality and safety. How a vaccine is added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. Once the FDA licenses a vaccine, CDC brings together the members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, to review all of the research available on the licensed vaccine. The members of the ACIP include world-renowned vaccine and disease experts from groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians, CDC, and other government agencies. These experts look at how well the vaccine works and whether it's safe when given to different age groups. They also weigh the seriousness of the disease the vaccine prevents and figure out how many children would get sick if they did not get vaccinated. The experts then decide if they should recommend that vaccine be added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. If the CDC approves the experts' recommendations, the vaccine officially becomes part of the schedule, and soon it will be available at your healthcare provider's office. How a vaccine's safety continues to be monitored. Once children start getting the vaccine, the FDA and CDC continue to watch for possible side effects. Reactions that happen after a vaccination get reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or VAERS. Anyone can submit a report to VAERS, including parents, caregivers, patients, doctors, and nurses. However, the reactions that are reported may or may not be caused by the vaccines. They may require further investigation. Researchers at FDA and CDC analyze the VAERS reports and look for any trends that may be happening. FDA and CDC also use other vaccine safety systems. The Vaccine Safety Data Link, or VSD, and the Post-Licensure Rapid Immunization Safety Monitoring System, or PRISM, actively monitor new vaccines to obtain additional information about their safety. VSD has access to healthcare information for over 24 million people. PRISM can analyze healthcare information from over 190 million people. CDC also uses the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project, or CISA, to study vaccine safety. CISA is a collaboration between CDC and 7 medical research centers. CISA vaccine safety experts conduct individual case reviews and clinical research studies about vaccine safety. Recommendations for using the vaccine may change if the vaccine's risks are found to be greater than its benefits. The end goal is always the same: to safely and effectively protect children, families, and communities against potentially serious diseases. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/vaccines or cdc.gov/vaccine-safety or fda.gov/CBER.
Perfect. There is so much information in that video. And while I don't necessarily expect that you would be able to walk us through the life of a vaccine step by step, I just like that it's out there to help you understand what the traditional cycle looks like and kind of be able to ensure people, even if you can't tell them, you know, every single step, that it does make sense, that it is, you know, a solid system, and that lots of safeties have been put into place to make sure that these vaccines are effective and potent and safe and pure. Okay. I'm so sorry. Oh man, we only have like 14 minutes left. Wendy, you talked too much. Okay, so immunization conversations. Too many vaccines. Mom and dad both think vaccines are good, but that babies get too many at one visit, and their immune systems are still too new for so many. They plan to delay some vaccines and only get 2 in each visit. What are some things you can say to educate them and reassure them? And again, Dr. Offit's video is phenomenal on this. I am going to skip it today just because there are several myths that I want to make sure we touch on that are hot button topics. What I will say quickly is that I was one of those parents that was like, oh my God, don't stab my kid 4 times. I can't, that's too much. You're inundating them. And I mean, this is, you know, in the height of my public health career. So even those of us who have this education still think, I'm nervous about it. And so, you know, my kid's pediatrician, who thank God is very patient with me, you know, had the conversation. You know this already. And this is what she told me. Getting childhood vaccines are not an extra burden on the immune system, even for babies. Babies are exposed to hundreds of viruses and bacteria during normal activities like eating and playing. And if your kid is anything like any of my kids or most normal kids, they have put literally everything in their mouths. Even though kids receive more vaccines, they receive far fewer antigens overall compared to their parents and their grandparents. Wendy had touched on that earlier graphic, if you recall. So our children are now protected against more diseases too. Less antigens, more disease coverage. Wendy, autism.
Yes, so this is a classic misconception. So this is the conversation. A mom of a 13-month-old toddler is sharing in her mom's group that her baby is not the same as she was before her MMR shot. She's worried that the shot caused harm and wants to warn others about vaccines and autism. So we are going to, and this is one slide that we do want to play the video for the next.
You ready?
I was gonna let, yeah. So there's no, we're gonna, yeah, sorry. The MMR vaccine just happens to be timed at the same time when you start seeing your baby's personality develop. Just because it happens at the same time doesn't mean it was caused by the vaccine. And then this is a video that I do want to play because Dr. Offit, again, says it better than we do. He's the real pro. It's on the next slide, I believe.
The big man on
Yep.
campus. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think probably one of the most common concerns parents have about vaccines is, do they cause autism? Certainly very easy to find that contention on the internet and in chat rooms, so it can be scary. And I think from the parent standpoint, they argue this: look, my child was fine, they got a vaccine, now they've developed signs and symptoms of autism. Could the vaccine have done it? Well, the good news is that's an answerable question. And it's really been in three different areas that this issue has been raised. One is the concern that the combination of measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR vaccine caused autism. The second is the notion that there was an ethyl mercury containing preservative that was in a number of vaccines. Now it's only in some multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine called thimerosal. And then the third sort of concern is that children are just getting too many vaccines too soon, that that's somehow weakening or overwhelming or perturbing their immune system. Well, these are studyable questions. You can answer this question. So, for example, in the case of measles, mumps, and rubella, there now have been 18 studies done in 7 different countries on 3 different continents involving hundreds of thousands of children who either did or didn't get the MMR vaccine, making sure that those two groups are otherwise similar with regard to their healthcare seeking behavior, their socioeconomic background, their medical background. And again and again and again, those studies all found the same thing, that the MMR vaccine did not cause autism, and that's been true also for these other two concerns. The good news is I think most parents get this. I think most parents believe these studies because a recent study by the Autism Science Foundation found that about 85% of parents of children with autism now are comfortable that vaccines weren't the cause. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's important to point out also on that one is that the one flawed study, the doctor who was in charge of that has lost his medical license. The study was it was trash. So it shouldn't have ever been published. It shouldn't have ever gotten out there in the first place, but it has caused a lot of harm. And a lot of resources have gone into proving it wrong. So like he said, it's an answerable question, and we've answered it. So parents can put their mind at ease that it's not the cause of autism. Okay, so moving right along. This is the next one. A family you're working with just attended a chickenpox party so that their kids have a chance to get the disease and boost their immune system. They want to know if chickenpox and measles parties are a good idea. This is something that I thought went away, but is still out there. And with COVID, before there was a vaccine, and I think even after, people were having COVID-19 parties so that they would all get it and be exposed and be done with it. And this is very harmful, and this is not a good idea.
It's deadly.
Right, exactly. And people get, as we know, very, very sick. The next slide, Kai. So it's interesting because infection usually does cause better immunity than a vaccine, although we saw earlier that with in pregnancy, the vaccine caused the better immunity to the baby after birth. Natural disease can be extremely dangerous. Paralysis, permanent brain damage, liver cirrhosis or cancer, deafness, blindness, pneumonia, death. These are all things that can happen if somebody gets sick with measles. These are not side effects from the vaccine. So the vaccine is much safer than getting active infection. So there is another video. If you would like to watch that, please do. If you are hearing about these measles parties, chickenpox parties, hopefully no more COVID-19 parties. But one thing we definitely want to touch on is how you can find reliable resources. We are stuck in this feedback loop. So you Google something, say I'm concerned, and I Google COVID-19 vaccine safety 6-month-old. Or I say 6 months, Google something about a reaction that a 6-month-old had. So you kind of click on a link, and then you click on another link that says vaccines are bad. And then all of a sudden, all of the information that's being fed to you is that information. So it's feeding you the information that it thinks you want to read. That doesn't mean it's reliable. So there's some very reputable sites that you can look for when you're looking for reliable resources. And there are other things that you can look for on websites that you can tell if it's reliable or not. If they're trying to sell you something, if they're trying to sell you this new cure-all elixir, it's probably not going to be a reliable source. So TAPI has some really great resources on how to, well, TAPI has some really great resources, but they also have this sheet that's available on how to review a website yourself or a resource yourself and find out if it's reliable or not, just by looking at it. And these are a few that are really great ones. We referred to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia a few times today. That's where Dr. Offit works. The CDC obviously is a great resource. They're kind of the front runners. And let's see. And then of course, TAPI. TAPI has a lot of really great resources, and they have this handout that lists a bunch of resources that are available specifically. And these are just, this is an example of all of the resources that they have. I don't know if Laura, if you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, sounds good. So all of these resources are available on our website. It really depends on what kind of organization you're working with, what would be helpful to you. So please look at our website. I'll put the link in the chat. If you need a childhood immunization schedule, we have that for you. If you are a school nurse, there's a special website for you with resources you can hand out to parents. If you work with older children and teens, we have resources about what vaccines teens need, what they need before going to college, all of that. So these are all available on our website. And for free, you can order them printed or download them straight from the website. Next slide. Oh, what's that?
I said, look at that baby.
Yes, so cute. I just wanted to tell you that Vaccines for Children is a program that everyone is able to get a vaccine for free. If you do not have health insurance, that should not be stopping you from vaccinating your children. So you can visit the TAPI website at whyimmunize.org to find a free immunization clinic. Next slide. Thank you so much to our presenters. We always appreciate them presenting, and they do such a great job. We have a few surveys. The first one is just an evaluation of the training today. Your feedback helps us improve future trainings, and so we really would love for you to fill out that evaluation. We have a lot of prizes to give away for people who fill out the evaluation. We put you into a drawing. And they are good prizes. So I'm going to put the link in the chat right now and head over there to get that filled out. And then if you are a registered nurse, a social worker, or a certified health education specialist, we do have CE credits available for you. Here's the link for that. And I think that's it. So if you have any last questions, we can hang around for a few minutes and answer them through the chat. Otherwise, have a great day. We hope that you learned something today. You'll all receive a thank you email with the links from all of the resources today. So if you thought about a certain video you saw today and you wanted to refer back to it, you will have access to that. So watch for that thank you email, and everyone have a great day. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Any last questions? Feel free to put them in the chat.